You are listening to WCAT Radio, your station for quality Catholic programming. Your selected program will begin right after a word from our sponsor, GroupM7.com, a web design and hosting company. Log on to GroupM7.com today and let them know that WCAT Radio sent you.
You know, my finest childhood memories was the Saturday morning movies. For about 4 bits each, my brother and I could split a Coke and a big box of popcorn and watch movies about Tarzan, Jane, and their Amazon River adventures. Well, maybe that's where Jeff Bezos took his name. His Amazon.com is now the largest online retailer in the world. I'm Michael Mahfood with Group M7, the oldest and largest website design firm in East Texas. And here's my point, and as usual, it's a good one. If your website is modern and up-to-date, mobile and search engine friendly, it matters not whether you sell a product or provide information about your goods and services, your sales justifiably will increase just like theirs. The world uses the internet. We can improve your website and your email. Look at our giant portfolio at GroupM7.com. Since 1995, there's only one web and there's only one group, and it's us. It's Group M7.
You're listening to WCAT Radio, your home for authentic Catholic programming.
Hello and welcome to another edition of St. Paul's Letters to America. I'm your host, Ray Gerard, and this is the program that asks, what if St. Paul were alive today? What if he were here to actually write a letter to the Americans? What if he had a letter, what if there was a new letter added to the Bible? St. Paul's letters to the Americans. What do you think would be in it? What do you think if he were here, able to see what's going on in our country, that he would tell us? What do you think he would tell us? Well, on this program, we can tell you exactly that. And we're going to give you just such a letter. And why can we do that? Well, it's really very simple. And that is the things that St. Paul wrote wouldn't change over time. They wouldn't change at all. They do express things that are true, and things that are true don't change over time. Now, how do we know that they're true? Well, actually, that's one of the things we do in this program is we try to examine these letters from St. Paul and ask the question, hey, is this true? Is this reliable? Does it make sense? And we compare it to things that we can find in our culture today, other things from other sources, and if they agree with these other sources, then we have a good idea that maybe the things that St. Paul wrote are true after all. And we're actually going to be doing that in the program today. But anyways, the letter that we have today from St. Paul is, I urge you to live with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another through love, striving to preserve the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace, one body and one Spirit. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Now, what's to argue with that? What could arguably not be true about that? He urges us to live with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another through love. And why? Because we're all part of one body, and we all can partake of or get connected with the same single Spirit. St. Paul believes, obviously, that there's a guiding force, there is a God, there is a uniting bond, as he refers to it, of love. And if we do that, then if we try to get connected with the Spirit, if we try to live with one another this way, then we find the fruits of the Spirit. We will find peace. We will find joy. We will find, all kinds of, we'll find self-control. I mean, all you have to do is look around a little bit in our world today and see that that's not exactly happening. The title for this particular program could simply be, Dear God, help me hate. Yeah, help me hate. There is believe it or not, there is a theology professor who wrote that into a prayer. Her name is Shanakwa Walker Barnes. She is an associate professor of practical theology at what appears to be a Baptist university. It's Mercer University in Macon, Georgia. She is an associate professor of theology at a university in Georgia. And she wrote a prayer, and it got published in some collection of prayers. And I quote from her prayer. Dear God, please help me to hate white people, or at least to want to hate them. At least I want to stop caring about them, individually and collectively. I want to stop caring about their misguided racist souls, to stop believing that they can be better, that they can stop being racist. She really desires the God to hate the, quote, nice ones, the people who don't see color, who make thinly veiled racist comments about, quote, those people. She continues with a prayer, quote, Lord, if you can't help me hate them, at least spare me from their perennial gaslighting, white mansplaining, and white woman tears. Lord, if it be your will, harden my heart. Stop me from trying to see the best in people. Free me from this burden of calling them to confession and repentance. So here we have a prayer to God to help this woman hate millions of people. St. Paul talks about one spirit, one body. It doesn't differentiate between color. He writes in his letters about that we're all the same, whether Greeks or Jews, so I guess that would relate to people who are secular and people of faith in our day, perhaps. He writes to people who are slaves and who are free. We don't have slavery anymore, but they did then. And he said, slaves, masters, Greeks, Jews, whatever, whoever you are, you're all loved by God. Everybody's loved by God. Everybody's part of the same body. Everybody is loved by the same Spirit. Everybody's connected by the same bond of love through the same Spirit. That was St. Paul's world. And here you have supposedly a Christian professor of theology asking for her heart to be hardened so that she can hate. What in the world would make her think that that's all consistent with the God, the Christian God, the God of the Bible? The Bible is full of references to people's hearts being hardened, but it's a bad thing. And their hearts are hardened against God. She's asking for our hearts to be hardened against people that God must love. Why is it a better world if we think that some people are loved by God and some people are not? If her prayer would be granted, that would mean that God would not love white people. What kind of a God is that? Would we even want that kind of a God? Surely we don't want a God who hates black people. Should white people pray that God will, help them hate black people? Will that actually help this country in any way, shape, or form? Maybe we should pray to get. Maybe Asian people will think that God hates everybody who's not Asian. Maybe Hispanics will think that God hates everybody who's not Hispanic. Maybe tall people will think God hates short people. Whatever. How does this make? And what would possess a theology professor to get to that point? How can we understand what makes a person do that? Remember, one of the things that St. Paul said is the fruit of the Spirit. The fruit of the Spirit. In other words, if you get connected to God, if you feel the love of God, it's been said that people who don't believe in God are people who simply have not felt the love of God yet. Because once you feel it, there's no going back. So, what would possess somebody to make a prayer like this? Because St. Paul tells us the fruit of the Spirit is not only love, joy, and peace, but the last characteristic he mentions, self-control. Self-control. What's it easier to do? Is it easier to hate or is it easier to love? Is this woman perhaps just tired of trying to love people that she thinks do not like her? That would certainly seem to be the case. That's a hard thing to do. That's a hard thing to do, to love people that you think don't like you. It takes a lot of perseverance, a lot of endurance, a lot of strength being drawn from God. We can't do it on our own. Is that's what's possessing her? But for a person of faith, to write this prayer and then publish it, to get other people to perhaps agree with that. You're turning people against other people and using God to do it. Most of the people who don't believe in God, most of the atheists in this world, at least the famous ones like Richard Dawkins, talk about the fact that wars are brought about. The worst things that religion does, the worst results throughout history caused by religion are wars over religion. One group thinking, that they should kill the other group because they're doing God's will and they're asking God for help to do it. And there we have a woman making a prayer along those very same lines, feeding into these criticisms of people who don't believe in God. But she's not alone. As wild as that seems, she's not alone. This guy, his name is Damon Young, and he is co-founder of Very Smart Brothers, theroot.com, and he's a contributing opinion writer for the New York Times. Anyways, he was one of the people that was featured on a piece done by Tucker Carlson of Fox News, and Mr. Young writes an article in The Root where he titles it, "Tucker Carlson is right. I hate white people, and here are 20 things I'd do to keep that hope alive," or to keep that hate alive. He says one of the things he does is that he recites the Lord's Prayer, the Our Father, with my family. He recites it with his family, but instead of ending it with amen, he adds, "and then kill Whitey." With his family, he's praying to God to kill Whitey. God, forgive us of our sins. Save us, from hell. Forgive us our sins as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Oh, and then kill Whitey. That's how he ends the Our Father. And he does this with his family, teaching, if by his family, if he has children, if he means his, by family, if he means his children, then he's teaching his children that they can pray to God to help kill Whitey. He says, some of the other things he does, he logs on to Facebook. He ironically likes pictures of white people smiling and then leaves ominous messages underneath saying, "It's almost time." Another thing he used to do, now he has a conference call with other secret white people haters. They used to meet in person in the Pittsburgh area, but they stopped doing that because they just couldn't find a venue that didn't have some kind of white paint. He's got a dog named Backtaf, BACTAF, which is an acronym for Biting All Crackers Today and Forever. So here's a person, obviously, hates white people. And if you're wondering why, in this piece he tells us. He says, I've been trying to keep this information concealed for years now. I've secretly hated white people since a skating party in 1992 when a white girl named Megan Lipslinker laughed at me when I fell in the rink while attempting to jump around when a certain song came on. Since then, he says, my hate has done nothing but grow and become hungrier. And like most other hungry things, and most other things that need to stay alive, it needs to be fed daily. His hate needs to be fed daily. And that's what he tries to do. So it's not unusual. You know, people who have been burned in one way or another, this guy was laughed at. And so he tries to return it. He was wounded, and he's still not gotten over it. And he prays to God to hate white people, to kill white people. This is perhaps a little disturbing again, though it's not isolated. It's not isolated. Now, this is even scarier still. Here's a student, a law student at the University of Miami. And she's the president of the Black Law Students Association. She's chief of staff to the Student Bar Association. She was chief of staff to the Student Bar Association the last school year. And she's writing editor for the Race and Social Justice Law Review at the university. There's a woman who has, some significant positions at a major law school in this country. She's presumably going to get a law degree. She's going to become, an officer of the court here in the United States. Maybe someday she'll even become a judge. But she's going to be bringing cases before courts of law, based on the law or arguing for what the law should be in this country. And she says that people always tell me that hate is such a strong word. And she says, quote, and yes, it is, but there are some strong blank stories I've heard. And until I can figure out how to reconcile them in my head and in my heart, I hate white people. She has received a scholarship. She's at the university with a scholarship from the Miami-Dade, Florida Association for Women Lawyers. Again, she's a person who has already gained some significant recognition, and presumably she might get to a position of some kind of significance in her career because of the fact that she has already gotten such recognition. She says, I hate white people. 5 students apparently have filed complaints against her with the university, asking the university to look into this. I mean, that's hate speech. That's hate speech. She says, I hate white people. It's hate speech. But university officials have so far not responded. They're going to do nothing. Is it disturbing? Somebody who's going to be, charged with arguing the law in this country, taking people's cases. I mean, do we want people that are going to be officers of our courts, arguing before judges who hate a large portion of our society? What kind of people do we need to have in charge in future decades? I mean, the people that graduate from law schools, most politicians, many politicians in most legislatures, most of the politicians are lawyers. These are the people that we charge with operating the laws of our country. And I can't believe that her opinion is so uncommon. As a matter of fact, I know it isn't. There are young lawyers coming up who have unbalanced ideas. To hate whole segments of the country. Would we want white lawyers, white judges, who would say, I hate black people? Would we want Asian judges, Asian lawyers to say, I hate black and white people? How about Native American Indian lawyers, law enforcement officers, anybody? How about if they said, well, I hate whites, blacks, and Asians? I mean, how is that good at all? These people are going to be making decisions. What's that country going to be like? This is poison. Hate is poison. It feeds on hate and it grows. People hate back. And and all you have is disorder and strife and disunity and animosity. How is that good for anybody? Remember, St. Paul said the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, and peace. In the 60s, the slogan was, make peace, not war. How have we come so far from that? There's a woman who writes a personal story, an interesting personal story. It appeared in a website called The Odyssey Online. She talks about being at Portillo's. Perhaps she's in the Chicago area. She talks about, I was at Portillo's with a couple of friends. And by the way, the names, she tells us that the names that she uses in her story have been changed. So that these don't, so nobody knows, maybe what real people to whom she might be referring. So anyway, these names are fictional. But she says, I was at Portillo's with a couple of friends. And one of my friends, Jen, starts going off about how she completely despises her ex-boyfriend, who happens to be white. As soon as she mentions his race, another one of my friends, Andrea, interjects and says something that hasn't left this person's mind, the author of this piece, hasn't left her mind since. Her friend Andrea said, quote, I don't mean to sound racist, but I just really hate white people, close quote. I don't mean to sound racist, but I hate them. And then the person writing this piece writes, why? Why was that necessary to say? Even worse, Jen was completely okay with Andrea saying that. In fact, Jen responded, quote, actually, you can't be racist towards white people. You can be prejudiced or discriminatory, but not racist. So it's okay to say. You can't be, it's okay to hate white people. It's not racist at all. The person writing this piece continues with an account of seeing something on TV. Actually, it was on CNN. And there was a mentally disabled white man. And this was on tape. I think the people were part of it. They posted it on Facebook or on some online site, but they took video of this and posted it online. And CNN apparently showed it. There was a mentally disabled white man. He was kidnapped and tortured on film by 4 African Americans. On top of this, they shouted, F-bomb white people and F-bomb Trump, and cut him, and then they cut him with a knife and duct taped his mouth. She mentions a certain correspondent from CNN defending these kidnappers by talking about the fact that black people are oppressed in the U.S., and so we should understand why these kidnappers are angry. The woman who writes this article, however, just was caught by the white man, this mentally disabled white man, and how he looked just so scared. I mean, doesn't know, what happened to his world or what's going to happen next. Is he going to die? This is a horrible, horrible act. And obviously it's a hate crime. It's being done because he's white. F-bomb white people. And then the author of this piece, who was having lunch with, black friends, perhaps the author of this piece, I would assume that perhaps the author of this piece is black herself. Otherwise, you would think maybe that her friends wouldn't say, well, hey, I just really hate white people. So we would perhaps presume that this is a black woman who writes this piece. But she says, my main question is, since when did it become trendy to hate white people all of a sudden? When did it become trendy? When did it become the thing to do? Why is it becoming okay? Why is it, since when did it become not racist to say, I hate white people? What is happening to our country? Paul says that we're united through a bond of peace, one body. We are one. Certainly doesn't feel that way. The people that we're talking about certainly don't feel that way. And they don't want to be united. It seems. Perhaps if they thought, well, it seems. But hate is a thing that catches on. Once it starts, it can get fed. And the people that feed it are the ones that, and unfortunately a lot of them are in politics. They're in positions of leadership. They're positions of power. They're the people who we rely on to lead our country. And unfortunately a lot of those people are feeding this. And that really doesn't help anybody. But hate is a thing that it can be fed. It can even be enjoyed. It can even be enjoyed on Amazon.com. There's a Kickstarter exclusive game, Hate. It's a board game called Hate. A board game. And that's its title, Hate. There's a video game, and I could describe a little bit about it, but what's the point? There's a video game called Hating Simulator. You've heard of, flight simulators, driving simulators. You can practice flying a plane or driving a car. This one's a hating simulator. Well, isn't that nice? It's a hating simulator. And it involves, I guess, two guys trying to convince a girl to date them. So they're competing with each other. And so the object of the game is to try to, hate the other guy. And at one point, there's one of these competing suitors turns into a red, fiery face, a jagged, red, fiery face. And he then began, the name for that suitor at this point becomes Spirit. Spirit. Not the spirit of St. Paul. St. Paul talks about the Spirit. One Spirit. And the fruits of it are love, joy, and peace. One Spirit uniting all of us. Well, this is a different kind of spirit. This spirit is a tortured soul left to an existence of suffering by Daddy Dearest. Does that not refer to the devil in hell? Sent there by God, the Father. Daddy Dearest. Sends Spirit to hell. Now, if there's any doubt about that, well, as you proceed with the game, Spirit talks about having direct contact with real humans after being trapped in here for so long. Talking about the girl, he says, I'll make her father pay for what he's done to me and all the others. Her father, Daddy Dearest, the Father in heaven, he's going to make her father pay for what he's done to me and all the others. Then he challenges the other kid trying to get the girl's affections. He says, "I'll beat you and make you take my place. You don't mind your body being borrowed, right? It's only fair." It's a sick game. The allusions to the devil, to hell, obvious. Made to look like, something like a fiery demon right out of hell. The face is not a happy face. It's not a pleasant face. The face of spirit. This is a game. This is fun. This is entertainment. This is what kids are being sold. I don't know how popular this particular game is, but there is a game. Hating Simulator. Practice hating. You can simulate hating. You can practice hating. Oh, beautiful. It's strange. You wouldn't think, at least I don't think you would think, that there are so many things to find when you go searching around online for hate. You just start doing word searches for hate or hating people, and you come up with all kinds of stuff. Board games, video games, and songs. There's an interesting song by Ellie Goulding. The title of the song is "Hate Me," and it's a spurn lover song. It's a song about a relationship, an on again, off again kind of relationship, where the guy apparently, throws her over and apparently, says that, he hates her and he's going to replace her. And, she says, hate me, still trying to replace me, chase me, tell you how you hate me, erase me, wish you never dated me, lies, tell me lies, baby. She basically, is singing about this guy who is saying he hates her, but he really doesn't, or can't get her out of his mind. And she's challenging him. You can't get me out of your mind. So that's what the song is about. But there's an interesting lyric in here where she says, it's a thin line between all this love and hate. Boy, isn't that true? And if you switch sides, you're going to have to claim your place. So, baby, this time you're going to have to seal your fate. She's basically saying, this time if you come back once more, you're going to, have to seal your fate. You're going to have to choose a side. You're going to either hate me or love me. At least that's what it seems. But aren't these lines reflective of hate itself? It's a thin line between all this love and hate. A thin line. A line that we can jump over easily because it's so thin. You can go from loving to hating. Perhaps the Baptist theology professor has loved for a long time, has tried to live out the love that God has for all of us, and tried to extend that to other people, and just got tired of doing it, and jumped over the line, and now she's praying to God so that she can hate white people. The Damon Young, at a skating party with a white girl, perhaps he didn't hate white people then, but she laughed at him, and ever since, different story. Thin line. But then Ms. Goulding says, and if you switch sides, if you cross that line, you're going to have to claim your place. Well, is that hating simulator actually reflective of reality? If you simulate hate, if you practice hate, if you learn hate enough, are you going to claim your place? Are you going to be that one who's consigned to flames by Daddy Dearest? Are you going to put yourself in hell if you simulate hating people enough? And here we've got people teaching their children through prayer to hate other people. This is dangerous stuff. This is truly dangerous dangerous stuff. And the funny thing about it is, you're not happy when you hate other people. It doesn't work that way. St. Paul says the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace. Peace. And it's love. If you hate, you don't have love. If you don't have love, you don't have peace. So then what? Do you not like yourself? There's an interesting article. It talks about self-loathing, 15 signs you hate yourself and why it happens. And this person talks about, her name is Alethea, if I pronounce that correctly, Alethea Luna. And she co-authored a book entitled The Spiritual Awakening Process. Anyways, she wrote this piece online. She talks about, people who, the 15 signs that you hate yourself, that you have self-loathing. She says, do you feel like no matter what you do, you're unimportant? Yeah. In fact, she says her self-hatred at one point was so strong that she resorted to self-harm. She says it's fueled by anger. In most cases, she says, it's the result of having a dysfunctional upbringing. She says, when we're young, we need to see our parents in an almost godlike way. We need to think they're infallible, because if we mistrusted them, it would have been very hard for us to survive emotionally, mentally, in some cases physically. Therefore, instead of critically analyzing and condemning our parents, which young children don't have the cognitive capacity to do, we turn the blame onto ourselves. If you have a bad upbringing, you think it's your fault. Another factor is poor social environment. She says a lot of people that use social media find other people who look like that they're beautiful people living beautiful lives, because people only put their best face forward, and sometimes it's a funny face online. And then you compare your life to it, and you don't measure up. Self-loathing. But then she gets to the core issue. She says, finally, quote, finally we come to the very core issue at the heart of all self-loathing. And it may cause you to roll your eyes or feel confused, but hear me out. Continuing, we are all born with no sense of me, my, and I. As babies, we are ego-less, at one with the universe. Oh yeah, that one body, one spirit, perhaps, that St. Paul was talking about. We have no sense of me apart from everybody else, apart from the entire universe. We're at one with everybody else and the universe. That one body, St. Paul talks about. This is not a religious piece, though, by the way, but I'll continue. She says, but as we grow older, in order to survive in this world, we need to separate ourselves to build a sense of self, to construct an ego. This basic separation from the universe, and she says, from the divine, is the root of all self-loathing. She calls it soul loss. And she says that occurs when we get so enmeshed and immersed in our fabricated egos that we feel totally disconnected from anything good, anything meaningful, anything real. Disconnected from anything good. What if we get disunited from huge segments of the population? What if we figure that all white people are not good and we have to be disconnected from them? Not a healthy thing. What if all white people thought they should be disconnected from all black people? Because black people, and then if we feel disunited from huge segments of the population, then we We don't feel the good that we would feel if we were united. We don't feel a good thing. One of her recommendations is, quote, get the hell off social media. She also talks about meditation. Her antidote is mindfulness and meditation. So, get to be at one with the universe. So like I said, it's not religious because she ends this without really saying that you have to believe in God or any particular God. She doesn't say that at all. Just engage in meditation. She says, you are worthy of love and you are here for a reason. And she encourages people to start a spiritual journey, I guess wherever that takes them. You are worthy of love. Sounds like, what is she talking about? She's talking about the same things that have been expressed in different ways by St. Paul, by the book of Genesis. The book of Genesis, the very first book of the Bible, tells us we are made in the image of God. And then near the end of the Bible, St. John tells us that God is love. And St. Paul is telling us, hey, we're all part of one body, one spirit, and the fruit of that is love. It's all connected. And this author, who went through self-loathing to the point where she inflicted harm on herself and is now encouraging people just to engage in just general spiritual journeys, is talking about the universe, not about God, not about God the Father, not about Jesus, but, hey, we're at one with the universe. So it sounds, just very, modernistic, non-traditional and so forth. But whatever, she has a sense of something, which is the same thing that St. Paul and St. John and the authors of the Bible are talking about. And, if you engage in a spiritual journey and take it far enough, and you do it objectively and you're not afraid of the answers you might find, my wager is you're going to end up believing in Christ. But the point is, you don't have to. If you take this author who doesn't mention Christ at all, but is talking about things that are the same principles that St. Paul talks about, what does that tell us? People are coming to the same answer from completely different directions. What does that tell us? They're probably onto something. You can't come to the same thing from two completely different directions unless that thing is there. So it's possible that we found another example where the things that St. Paul preaches, the things that he teaches, the things that he tells us are reliable. We can trust them. We can have confidence in them. Because here you've got somebody 2,000 years later from an entirely different perspective coming to the same conclusion. Don't be disconnected from people, she says. That's not healthy. And what is St. Paul telling us? One body, one spirit. Bear with one another through love. Bear with one another. It's not easy, but do it anyway. There's another author. Her name is Vanessa Van Edwards, best-selling national author, founder at Science of People. She wrote a groundbreaking book, Captivate, The Science of Succeeding with People, which has been translated into more than 16 languages. She's appeared on all the major television networks. Someone who's famous for her work in understanding people. Anyways, she wrote a piece, Why People Hate. The science behind why we love to hate. Why we love to hate. We started this program with people praying to God to hate. Certainly you think of God as loving, I would hope, you think. If you're praying to him, you expect him to give you some assistance, that he cares about you. And so we're going to use that loving relationship with God to help us hate. And here she writes the science behind why we love to hate. And she talks about research that has found people form stronger bonds when they're able to talk about their dislike towards someone else than when they have both been positive. So people form stronger bonds over disliking somebody else. A couple of people, if they dislike the same person, form stronger bonds than through a situation where they both like another person. There's one study that she mentions where, people who had a negative opinion of a man were far more likely to say they would get along well with someone who shared their negative opinion than those that had a positive opinion. Why do people love to hate? Well, she gives, she gives a number of reasons. One, people like to blame somebody else. So if they got stuff that's not going right in their lives, blame somebody else. One, they need friendship. People who hate the same person, your enemy is my enemy, they form a certain connection. There's a level of friendship there. It can be a defensive mechanism where, you hate somebody because they're a threat to you in some way. There are people who are insecure and feel, anxiety about other people. It kind of quells that anxiety. If you can just paint that person as a bad person, there's nothing in you that is causing you to feel anxious. It's because of that other person. Or she talks about people who share a moment of vulnerability. They might, to become friends with somebody, often enough, you have to share some kind of vulnerability. You have to open up about yourself. You do that, you open up yourself to them, maybe they open themselves up to you. And often enough, if you've been hurt by someone in your past and you share that, and somebody else has been hurt in a similar way, you can form a bond, you can form a friendship. Well, Damon Young did that. The gentleman from that online publication, The Root, talked about being laughed at by a white girl at a skating party. He was vulnerable. At a time when he was vulnerable, the time when he apparently fell down, he got at that vulnerable moment, he was hurt. He got laughed at, and the hurt stayed. And now he's encouraging us. Now he's doing meetups and video conferences with other people who hate white people. He's forming friendships with other people who hate white people because that then solidifies and justifies, his reaction that originated from that skating party. But the one thing she says that's really interesting, she says, hate feels easy. And isn't that true? Hate feels easy. She says, some people find it easier to make connections by putting others down and seeing who agrees with them, putting other people down. It is easier. It is often easier. It's easier to cross over that thin line. Love is hard. You have to bear with one another, as St. Paul says, through love. You have to have self-control. You have to steel yourself. You have to do it even though it's not pleasant. Christ loved the people who killed him. That wasn't easy. But that's his example to all of us. It's not easy to love, but it can be easy to hate. You don't have to work at that. Just do it. Love, that can take some work. This is where we are. We have people praying to God to hate. We have games, board games, video games, telling people it's fun to hate. We have people now not afraid at a Portillo's to say, hey, I just hate all white people. It's okay to say that. Why? What is going on? We're being told this is okay. It's like as a whole nation, we are forming friendships and bonds through hate. It's now trendy. It's okay to hate white people. We are forming connections. We're feeling justification. We feel anger. Black people feel anger. They feel that they've been misused, that they've been discriminated against, that they've been mistreated, and now they're getting people to agree with them, and they feel stronger. They feel justified, and they feel liked by the people who agree with them, and so this is growing. Ms. Van Edwards, she's talking about, the science behind why we love to hate and how this works, was not talking about racism per se, but it applies. It applies on a national level. This is what's happening to us as a country. If you need another indication of this sort of thing, it's interestingly enough, there's a heavy metal band called Hate Eternal. Their first album came out around 1999. They just released, I think their most recent one in 2018, around for 20 years. I looked at the titles of some of their songs. They're bad enough. I looked at the lyrics, they're even worse. They're devil worshippers. The name of the band is Hate Eternal. Hate forever. This hating doesn't come from God. It doesn't come from the Spirit. Not the Spirit that St. Paul is talking about. But it does come from another spirit, that same spirit that was in that video game. This is demonic. It is evil. It poisons people. It helps us to then not love ourselves because we don't feel peace. We don't feel a good thing. We don't feel connected to other people. It tears us apart. It's tearing the country apart. What we need to be doing is healing our wounds, not opening them up. We need to heal them. Now, some people say, well, in order to heal, you got to open them up. And, certainly there's truth in that. You have to look at something clearly and plainly. You can't hide something and pretend it's not there, But while we're doing that, do we have to tell ourselves to hate each other? St. Paul does have a different message, and I would submit that it is true, that it has stood the test of time, that it is always better to love, that these people that are praying for help to hate, these people that are trying to make us, simulate hate so that we can learn how to hate better, that's not a lasting message. It's not going to help us. At some point, people are going to realize this is only causing more trouble for everybody. And we're perhaps then going to be ready to hear this message from St. Paul when he says, I urge you to live with all humility and gentleness, bearing with one another through love, striving to preserve the unity that comes to us through the bond of peace, one body, one spirit. Wouldn't we all be better off if there was one body, one spirit? We all thought we were all part of the same body. We're all equal parts of one united body. No one any better or more important than another, and no one no worse or less than another. Isn't that the message we should have? Well, this has been another edition of St. Paul's Letters to America. We hope you've found it perhaps a little interesting, a little provocative. We hope you'll join us again. Until next time, God bless.
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
Thank you for listening to a production of WCAT Radio. Please join us in our mission of evangelization. And don't forget, love lifts up when knowledge takes flight.